Hello, everyone, and welcome to another SEJ Marketing Think Tank webinar. Thank you for joining us. Today, you'll be hearing from none other than Christy Kellogg. She is the founder of Dazzling Digital, and she's here to talk to you about content strategy and actionable on-page SEO tips to drive traffic in 2019. My name is Danny Goodwin. I'm the executive editor of Search Engine Journal, and I will be your moderator today. Christy, it's great to have you here. Can you please tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm so happy to share tips with you today. So like Danny said, I founded Dazzling Digital. So we're a digital marketing agency and we specialize in content strategy and SEO. And one of my favorite things to do is help people get their sites to rank higher. So some of the brands that I work with are Vogue, Bride, GQ, Allure, Glamour, and I'm so fortunate to work with these magazines. And I also get to work with Search Engine Journal, so that's a really great opportunity. I work with Mobile Monkey, that's Larry Kim's latest company, and that's an honor too. 50 Flowers, which is a wholesale flower marketing company, and a handful of other great clients. So I really love my job, and I'm thrilled to be in this industry.
Great. Thank you, Christy. Before we kick off the presentation, I just want to let everyone here know a few things. So if during the webinar you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask through the webinar question box at the bottom of the screen. We'll try to answer as many of your questions as we can during the Q&A session at the end of Christy's presentation. Also, we'll be asking a couple of poll questions during today's webinar, so you'll have the chance to take part and share your thoughts. We'll do our best during the webinar to link to any resources or tools that are mentioned in the chat or on social media. But if you have any questions, again, please just make sure to ask. After the webinar, please stick around for a short survey. It should take no more than 5 minutes. All that information will help us gauge what works, what topics you're interested in, and how we can make future SEJ think tanks more valuable and useful to you. So we'd really appreciate it. And finally, the entire webinar that you're about to see will be recorded and we'll make it available through a recap post on Search Engine Journal. That post will also include those slides, and Christy will also do her best to answer any questions that aren't answered in the Q&A today in that post. So without any further delay, let's dive right into the webinar. So Christy, take it away when you're ready.
Thanks, Danny. Okay, so can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so like we just talked about, we're talking about content strategy and actionable on-page SEO tips, specifically for 2019. So this has got the latest information in it. You already heard a little bit about me and my clients, so we'll just dive right into the presentation. So when I think about content strategy, I always think about two things. I think about content strategy for people, the readers, the users, and then I also think about content strategy for search engines. And the truth is one can't exist without the other. You can have the best content in the world that's super useful and rich and relevant, but if it doesn't show up at the top of the search engine results page or in an answer box, no one's going to see it. On the other hand, you can have content that ranks number one, has an answer box, and it's got all this SEO in it, and it's, you know, the search engines love it. But if people don't love it and it's not useful to them, they're going to bounce. And then what was the point of doing all that SEO? So when we think about content strategy, we need to think about the user and the search engine. So this presentation will be divided into those two parts. But before we get into the tips, let's all get on the same page about what is content strategy to begin with. So content strategy is about a few things. It is about driving visibility and awareness. It's not necessarily about conversions, although conversions are certainly a goal always, but it's more about that traffic and brand visibility. So if you're doing content strategy, you first need to know your audience. So what does that mean? That means doing persona research. That means looking at your analytics and your demographic data to see who is coming to your site, like who are they, what do they do, what are they interested in, what do they care about. So definitely go into Google Analytics and look at your demographic data. And also if you're running ads, that's a great resource to learn more about your audience. Also, talk to your sales team. Talk to the people that are taking calls from customers and find out their pain points and what they need and what they're looking for. And as you start to gather this data, you get a picture of who your audience is. Another great tip is to look at the keywords that you're trying to optimize your site for, and then go to autocomplete, or people also ask on Google. This is a great way to identify other questions and concerns they might have, and you can develop content for that. So in addition to knowing your audience, you want to know your content. So as a content marketer, you are responsible for everything that's on your site, and that means knowing what's on it. You need to know what's doing the best and what's doing the worst. You need to be in analytics, knowing what's getting a lot of traffic. You also need to know where the gaps are. Like, what are you missing that really should be on your site? Just take inventory of all that and be responsible for it and take ownership. Lastly, you need to know your options. So there's so many options when it comes to content. You can create a blog post, a video, a podcast, and oftentimes people will think, oh, I need to make an infographic. Well, that's the wrong way to think. You need to think of ideas first and then think of the format. So if you have a keyword that you're optimizing your site for and you have all this data and it's statistically rich, that's something that could be a white paper or an ebook. You could capture leads with a download form. If you have something that's highly visual, that can be your infographic. Let the idea dictate the format, but always keep your options open and play with different formats and see what works for your audience. And the last thing we want to touch on about content marketing, content strategy, is that they call it content marketing for a reason. Don't ever leave out the marketing part. So I like to say that however long you took to create a piece of content, you should spend just as much time promoting it on social media. You should also do your email marketing. If you have the budget for it, you can do ads. Just don't forget that really integral aspect of content marketing. So now that we're all on the same page about what content marketing is, let's take a pause and do a poll to find out who you are.
Great. So, okay, everybody get your voting fingers ready for our first poll here. So our first poll question is, what is your biggest hurdle when it comes to content marketing? Option 1, coming up with topics. Option 2, optimizing the content for search. Option 3, not enough budget. Option 4, finding qualified writers and content strategists. Or option 5, something else. So as you guys vote, I definitely would vote myself for budget as being one of the biggest hurdles that I hear most often about. So I'd be curious to see if those are the results we see. But yeah, definitely a lot of clients seem to have, champagne aspirations on, beer budgets, as they say. So yeah, I'm curious to see these results, and let's see what the biggest one is. And looks like the winner, optimizing content for search, the biggest hurdle. Interesting. Okay, so Christy, I'll let you take back over from there.
Thanks, Danny. Okay, so we're going to dive into the section that's about content strategy for search engines. So we'll start off with metadata, and we'll look at meta descriptions first. So meta descriptions are meta descriptions, we've all written them, right? They're a summary of your content, and they're 130 to 160 characters, and this is where you say, hey, this is what this piece of content is about. They're really important because they're a very big signal to Google about, like I just said, what the content is about. But also, whenever you write a meta description, that description has a chance to show up as a snippet on a search engine results page. So this was a look at a search engine results page for the keyword phrase first look wedding. And we're going to zoom in to this red box so we can get a closer look. This is the snippet, and a meta description is what is powering and feeding that snippet. So if you can control exactly how that shows up, that's such a huge win as a content creator, because you can put a call to action, you can optimize it for what you want people to do. Obviously click, but you can highlight certain things in it. So this is an example of an article that I did for Brides Magazine, and it's ranking #1 in the keyword phrase is first look wedding. So I want to point out that this is not always what happens. So you can write a meta description and have it not feed into the snippet. So here's another example of an article I did for Brides where this is not what I wrote. And why is that happening? Okay, so here's a look at the article. You can see there's these headers and Google decided to pull the headers into the snippet instead of using the description that I wrote. And you can see that was the description and it's in the source code. Now, does this mean we shouldn't always be writing meta descriptions? No, we should always be writing meta descriptions because one, it's still a signal, and two, we can have the example with first look wedding photo where, you know, it came up the way we wanted it to and it was a win. So let's talk about some best practices for writing those meta descriptions. One, you always want to add a call to action at the end of the meta description to entice clicks. So you can see here, we have discover, there's your call to action. The keyword should appear as close to the beginning of the meta description as possible. The closer it gets to the front, the bigger a signal to Google that this is what this content is about. In this instance, I was able to put the keyword at like the exact start of it, and that sometimes works with the keyword phrase you have and sometimes it doesn't. So just try to get it as close as you can to the front. And also, you want to make sure to limit your meta description to 158 characters. So the snippet has a certain width based on pixels, but the pixel correlation to characters is about 158 characters. So if you don't want the snippet to appear truncated with a little ellipsis at the end, you definitely want to get it in those 158 characters. So let's talk about title tags while we're at it. So title tags are this portion that show up in the SERP. And as with the meta description, Google can change it and title it whatever it thinks is most appropriate. But creating a title tag is always a huge signal to Google, hey, this is what I want you to make the title tag. And that's also an indication of what the content is about. And as far as best practices go for title tags, you want to limit the title tag to 60 characters. Again, you don't want it to get truncated. And you also, again, want the keyword to appear as close to the beginning of the title tag as possible. There's a tool that I like, and it's Moz's title tag preview tool. This is entirely free, and you can pop in your title tag, and you can see how it'll actually look, if it's going to get truncated, and it's really useful. So again, that's Moz's title tag preview tool. So let's switch gears and talk about headers. This is one of my favorite topics. When you're thinking about headers, you always want to think about them as a hierarchy. So you should never have an H2 above an H1 or an H3 above an H2. You shouldn't skip H2s altogether and go straight to H4s or H3s. So this is a really good illustration of how to think about headers. Also, this is so important. There should only ever be one H1 on a page. So just never violate that. Lastly, you don't ever want to use headers as a stylistic choice. So what I mean by that is that people will often skip to H3s and H4s because they like the way they look better, and this is not the right way to be using headers. So headers should only be thought about as a formatting thing that is showing Google this comes after this or within this. If you don't like the style, talk to your front-end developer or whoever can modify that for you, but don't keep relying on the incorrect headers. So why is this also important? Because headers can lead to answer boxes, and we all want an answer box, right? So this is an example of an article I did for Allure magazine, and we were targeting the keyword phrase different nail shapes. So as you can see, we got the answer box, which is a huge win. So how did we do it? One of the things we implemented was headers. So this is a snapshot of a section in the article. And as the article goes down, every nail shape is another header. And those headers are what are powering this bulleted list in the SERP. So that is a huge win. Now let's talk about content length. A very common question is, how long should my content be? And the answer really is, it depends on the keyword that you're trying to optimize it for. So you need to find an average of the word counts of the ranking articles. So in this example, I'm just pulling the SERP from different nail shapes. And so what I would do is I'd identify in an incognito search, so it's not biasing my results, right? I would identify the top ranking articles, and then I would find the word count of each of those. You can automate this process with a tool that's free. It's from SEO Review Tools, and it's the bulk web page word count checker. That's a handful. Okay, so you put in your URLs, and then when you hit perform check, it will give you your word count. So that just makes the process a little bit faster. So as you can, okay, so what is corrected word count? Let's take a moment to talk about that. That corrected word count is removing any of the words from comments or from ad copy. So we want to look at corrected word count, not word count total. So if I were coming along and I were writing about the same topic for a different magazine and I was going to try to beat the story that I had done on Allure, I would probably try to write something that was 1,000 words or more. I want to point this out because sometimes people think that, you know, just if I write something so long, it's going to win. That's not the case. If you came along and wrote 2,000 words on this topic, one, I don't even know how you would do it. It's different nail shapes. It's not something that's going to require that much to talk about. You could probably make it a little bit longer than what's showing up here if you like interviewed an expert on this subject, or you know, a new nail shape came out, which I can't imagine that would happen. So you could get a couple hundred more, but to try to get to 2,000 would be ridiculous, and you'd probably end up with something really fluffy. And it would be outside of the bell curve of what Google is expecting to see ranking. So you can use this data to inform your decision about how many words you should use in your article. Actually, let's stick on that. I want to make one more point. Another common question that I get asked is like, well, okay, what about keyword density? I'm just going to say it. Don't even worry about keyword density. Make sure you have the keyword as close to the beginning as possible, as with like the meta description and the title tag. You want to get the keyword up there at the top. I like to do it within the first 30 words. Other than that, have it in there at least twice, but you don't have to think about density. It's not something that's a big factor. If you really wanted to get granular and find out the keyword density of the ranking articles, you could use the same process that we just talked about and get a percentage, but I'm just saying it's not necessary. What you do want to make sure to do is never keyword stuff. Obviously, that's super obvious. And you also want to use synonyms naturally. And last but not least, never use an awkward or incorrect phrase just to satisfy a keyword. Like something, if it's like not correct English, don't write it that way. Write it the correct way. Because going back to the beginning, we're thinking about the user and the reader just as much as we are the search engine. So on that note, let's switch over to keyword opportunities. Like, how do we find keyword opportunities that we really have a chance to rank for? So I'm going to share two of my favorite strategies, and we're going to start with finding your diamonds in the rough. So what does this mean? This means part of being a content marketer, like we talked in the beginning, is knowing all your content. And part of knowing all your content is knowing what's ranking the best. So if you go into Google Analytics in the content drill down report, and that's how you get there. You can either just type it in and I'll take you, or you can go to behavior site content drill down. We've all been in analytics, so we know that we can see what's driving the most traffic. So if we have a result that's number 5, number 6, maybe it's number 10 or number 20, but it's kind of up there, what can we do to push a number 15 result to the top 10, so it shows up on page 1 of the search engine results? That can be a huge win. So instead of starting from scratch, we're looking at what's already doing really well and then re-optimizing it and finding a way to make it better. You can also head over to SEMrush, and we're going to zoom in on this red box. This is your top organic keywords. This is just for Search Engine Journal. You can pull this for any site, and you can see what's doing well. So this is another way to find content refresh opportunities. Another way you can find keyword opportunities is through competitor research. So if a competitor is ranking for a certain keyword, obviously Google is expecting to see that sort of a keyword on this sort of a site, and you have the same kind of a site. So if you don't have a piece of content like what your competitors are ranking for, that's like a huge signal. Hey, I should write something like that only do it better and see if I can rank above them. So obviously you can never get into your competitors' Google Analytics, but what you can do is pull that same report that we just looked at, and you can put in your competitor's actual website, and you can get data on that, which is awesome. If you're wondering at this point, though, like, who are my online competitors, which you might not have a firm handle on, you can also find out that information using SEMrush as well. So here I am, again, a search engine journal, and I'm going to zoom in. And this is what Google is seeing as my competitors. Search Engine Land, Moz, WordStream, Neil Patel. This makes sense. So if you do this for your own site, you might find some competitors that you didn't even know were online competitors, because your real-world competitors are not always the same as your online competitors. So that's how you do competitor research. And let's take another break to do another poll.
Yes, let's get that second poll going. So we just want to know a little bit about you. So what describes your role? Are you a content strategist or content writer? That's option 1. Option 2, are you an editor? Option 3, are you the CEO or founder of a company? Option 4, are you a marketing director? Or option 5, something else? So as we wait for those results to roll in, of course, I have to check in with number 2 as my answer as the editor for Search Engine Journal, and I hope we have some more editors out there today. And Christy, just before, we're going to get those poll results in just a second, but while we're waiting for those, we had a couple interesting questions come in that I just wanted to throw your way while we're still talking about all the on-page SEO.
Sure.
So let me just throw a couple of these your way right now. One of the interesting questions was about the answer box. Do we actually want to be in that answer box, or could it potentially reduce click-throughs to your site?
Oh, that's such a good question. There is no harm in having an answer box. There is only benefit. Studies have shown, and I don't have anything in front of me, but you can Google it. Studies have shown there's actually an increase in click-through rate if you have the answer box. I know when answer boxes first came out, there was pushback from the SEO community because, right, it feels like you're stealing my answer. Why does anybody have to go to my site? But it actually doesn't work that way, and people end up clicking on your site more. So, because, you know, they might get the answer, but then they want more. So what are they going to click? They're going to click the URL from the answer box. So that's a great question.
Right. And one other question before we share the quick results of the poll. In terms of H1 versus title tag, are there ways you should think about the language you use in those? Like, are they different? Are there different best practices for an H1 versus a title tag, or do you try to keep those the same?
I think usually they are the same, at least when I'm writing and working. Now, the difference is the H1 is what is going to show up on the actual content. So if someone does a social share, or if someone obviously goes to the page, or someone sees it in an email, like this is what's going to pull in. But usually you want to be as interesting in the title tag as you were in the H1, and you want to have the keyword in both. I guess the exception would be that the H1 could be longer, like maybe you have a longer title because you're not worried about it being truncated in the search engine results page. But far and away, they're usually the same. Actually, one other distinction that I just thought of while I was talking. For the title tag, like let's say you're a publisher, like a big magazine or a really well-known website, you've probably seen sites have their actual brand name in the title tag, like in the second half. So that's something that you wouldn't have in the H1. So that could be a distinction as well.
Okay, great. We have a lot of questions coming in, but we'll save a few more of these for the end of the session so we can get back to your presentation right now. Just really quickly, the poll results. Most people here, it looks like, are content strategists and content writers, so this is perfect. So let's keep those content tips rolling. Give it back to you, Christy, to continue your presentation now.
Thanks, Danny. Okay, so we did on-page SEO. So now let's talk about content strategy for people. We're going to start with why you need an editorial calendar. So one, it helps you set publishing frequencies and goals. it's easy to fall into the trap of, oh, I'm going to publish content, and then a month goes by and nothing has come out on your blog, and you had a really great intention, but it didn't actually come to fruition. So when you have an editorial calendar and you have really clear goals, like I'm going to publish something 3 times a week, or whatever it might be, maybe it's once a week, we have much more of a chance of actually meeting that goal, and it's written down and it's helpful to everyone. Having a content calendar also lets you identify seasonal keyword opportunities. And this seems really obvious. Like, we all know when Valentine's Day or Christmas or whatever it is coming. But when you have an editorial calendar in front of you, and let's say you sell chocolate, and you see Valentine's Day is 2 months out or whatever it is, you can start having a schedule of like, okay, maybe every Friday leading up to Valentine's Day, you have some different gift guide that features your chocolate, or, I don't sell chocolate, so I don't know what it would be, but we can create content around that holiday, because it's very easy if you don't have an editorial calendar for this holiday to sneak up on you and then like, oh, you only did 1 article or 0 articles. So definitely that is a big help. And an editorial calendar also helps you create content surrounding upcoming events that are important to your business. So let's say you have a nonprofit event coming up, or a huge sale, or a big online contest, or whatever initiative might be going on in your company. If you have this on a calendar, you can start seeing visually, well, here's when I need to start promoting it, and nothing ever gets left behind. So that's really the goal. In addition to having an editorial calendar, you also should always have a style guide. So a style guide exists because we want the content to look uniform and streamlined across the board. We don't want one writer formatting content one way and a different one formatting it a different way, or the tone of voice being different between writers. There's all these little nuances that go into creating content. So we all want to be like on the same page and writing in the same way and using the same format. Also, a style guide is really helpful when you have a new writer or editor join your team. Instead of having to like verbally tell them like a million little things that they're going to forget because they're just in conversation, having that style guide gives them a really useful resource that they can always look back to, and it just sets them up for success. Lastly, you can use an already established style guide as the foundation to your own. So many style guides are based on AP, which is Associated Press style, which just has rules of thumb for formatting content, using numbers, spelling, not spelling, but capitalizing this or not capitalizing that. And obviously you can take it and make it your own, but a style guide is good for everyone. Let's take a moment to talk about headlines. So how can we write engaging headlines to increase click-through rate? I'm just going to share some of my favorite tips. First and foremost, you let those keywords drive you. So this is an article I did for Search Engine Journal. The keyword was PayPal alternatives. So as you can see, it's front and center in the title. This is probably the most important thing when it comes to headlines. Short and sweet is A-OK. This is an article I did for Bryce. The keyword was cake cutting songs. So I use this as an example. A title doesn't always have to be long or fluffy or flowery. Sometimes it's better to get straight to the point, especially when you have longer words that are taking up more space. Just know that it's okay to get to the point. You can also leverage a compelling statistic. So this is an article that Matt Southern did for Search Engine Journal, and he talked a statistic right in the headline, and that's really compelling. 91% of brands are moving towards in-house digital marketing. Just if you have a statistic in your article, it can be a good place to get your headline from. And always practice the golden rule. Only write headlines that you'd want to read, the same way we should only treat others the way we want to be treated. So if you don't find your headline interesting, don't use it. Like, keep reworking it until you find a headline where you're like, oh, if I saw that, I'd click it, right? You can also ask a question. This gets people to click on your headlines. Also, oftentimes the keyword is a question. This is an article I did for Epicurious, and the keyword was, what is chorizo? So again, it's right there, front and center in the headline. So questions are always good. And you can also put a word in all caps. Do this sparingly, but sometimes it's is a good thing. So the reason I put fast in all caps in this headline was because everyone who was writing an article and ranking for how to make your teeth white, that's the keyword here, it was like the same title, right? Because it's so long, so it encompasses like the whole headline. So putting fast in there, especially in all caps, was a way to make it stand out with all the other headlines that were super similar. You can also use a number. So here's an article I did for Search Engine Journal, 11 ways to get started with chatbots. So it's elliptical, that's always good too. And studies have shown that people like odd numbers instead of even numbers. So don't feel like you have to do 10 or 20 or some even number. You can always do odd numbers and it's totally fine. The last thing I want to talk about when it comes to headlines is looking at competitors' headlines as well. You might have a really great headline that you came up with that utilizes these best practices that we just talked about, but someone else might have come up with the same exact headline. So make sure if you're, playing for number one, you're not creating the exact same headline that the number one result came up with. It's just a good thing to make sure you haven't done. You can read more about my headline writing tips. There's an article on Search Engine Journal. It's right here, 13 headline writing hacks you haven't heard. If you want to dive into that more, feel free to take a look. Now we're going to talk about evergreen content. So what is evergreen content? Evergreen content is content that is good year-round. It doesn't matter what time of year it is, what day it is. It's always going to be useful. So when it comes to evergreen content, we want to make sure we avoid referencing days, months, and years, unless it's the current year. If it's the current year, that can actually be an advantage. Like I'm sure we all saw the title for this presentation. I included 2019 because it is relevant to 2019, but that's an advantage to put the year. But if you're going to put the year, make sure to update it consistently. So the following year, you need to update the content and make sure to note that it's 2020, 2021. So don't date evergreen content with seasonal references. This happens kind of a lot. You don't want to say it's beach season or summer's right around the corner or it's pumpkin spice time, because if the content truly is good all year round, it's not going to be winter when someone's reading it in summer, obviously, and it's going to alienate that reader. So an example might be if you were doing a guide to wedding flowers and there are summer wedding flowers and you say something like, summer's right around the corner, are you getting your bouquets ready, whatever it may be. Okay, well, if someone's planning their wedding in winter, that's going to alienate them. So when you're doing evergreen content, just avoid these kinds of references. Obviously, this doesn't apply to like news content, but evergreen content, it definitely does. We're going to talk about content formatting now. So readers online have an attention span that is less than a goldfish, according to studies. So you have like less than 1.8 seconds to grab their attention. Why? Because they're second screening. They're doing other things at the same time. There's so much information coming to them. So like you don't want to, again, alienate them with like a long chunk of text. So you want to utilize short paragraphs, use bulleted and numbered lists, use pull quotes, headers, and incorporate videos and images, because studies have shown, like eye tracking studies, that readers scan a page. So when you have things like headers and pull quotes, you can quickly assimilate what the content is about without actually reading it. And so then you're like, oh, I want to know more. And then you actually read it. So these are just things to keep in mind when you want to increase the time on your page. And lastly, this presentation wouldn't be complete without looking at some best practices just for content based on common mistakes that we can all avoid. So this is something that comes up all the time. Quotation marks will after a period, comma, or question mark, or exclamation point, not the reverse. That's something to keep in mind. Also, you don't want to put quotations on random words. Like this seems very random, right? Like, why is Stacy in quotations? But sentences often show up like this that are this random. So always think about when you're using quotations, why you're actually using them. Use exclamation points sparingly. Use all caps, italics, and bolding sparingly as well. You're not shouting. And why this matters is because we just want the content to look as professional as possible. And if you were reading a newspaper article, would you see something in bold and all caps shouting at you? No. So we're trying to project a really professional, reliable, trustworthy image. So have your content reflect that. There should only be one space after a period. That's something that comes up a lot. And the list list should only have 3 dots. Don't use 5 or 7 or 2 here and 9 somewhere else. Just use 3 and have a space on either side. And last but not least, dashes should be formatted as M dashes, meaning 2 dashes together. So if you need to create that, you can hit Alt-0151 and it will create the good looking M dash instead of using 2 together with a little space or 1 small one. So if I were going to have 3 takeaways that I hope you remember from this presentation, here's what they are. Number 1, always think about the search engine and the user. One can't exist without the other. We need to be optimizing for both. Number 2, always be on the lookout for new keyword opportunities using your own content and your competitors as inspiration. And last but not least, no matter the size of your site or blog, treat all your content with the same care and attention to detail as a professional publication. It's only going to make you and your brand look better. So that is all. And then we wanted to take a minute to, if you're here for content strategy, there's going to be another webinar coming up on February 28th with Michelle Robbins that's also going to talk about content strategy. So if you were interested in this one, you'll probably be interested in that one. So Danny, back to you.
Awesome. Great job, Christy. Thank you for all that great information. So yeah, we have a little time left, so let's open up to some more Q&A. Just a reminder, if you haven't asked a question, you still have one, there's still time to submit. Just submit your question to the answer box, or you can hit us up on Twitter too with the hashtag SEJ Think Tank, excuse me. And yeah, we have a lot of good questions, so let me find a couple good ones here for you. Let's see. What is a good publishing frequency in your opinion, outside of like seasonal times when things are high? One of our attendees was wondering, is it like once a week? Is it more than once a week? Less than that? Do you have like any sort of general guidelines for that, Christy?
Well, I think it depends. That being said, if you can do something at a minimum of once a week, and I'm talking about maybe an industry that doesn't have a lot, but I take that back. Everyone has a lot to share. Like everyone has content they can create and guides for their consumers and their brands. So like at a minimum, once a week, at a minimum.
Okay, excellent. Another person is asking, are there any other suggestions that you could potentially give for keyword research other than SEMrush, potentially a free option?
Oh, sure. How about Neil Patel's Uber suggest? You could also use literally like autocomplete, and people also ask. That's a good indicator of some keyword opportunities.
Right, great. Let's see. Another question. What do you think is an effective tool for like mapping content to pages in terms of like when you're talking about evergreen content? How do you keep track of it? Like, is Excel the best option, or is there a tool that maybe can help you say, hey, you need to check this page on this date because it'll become outdated, something like that?
That would be a really cool tool to have. I don't know of any tool that does that besides your brain. So I would definitely have a spreadsheet where you had your best performing content. And you could even set calendar reminders to yourself. Like if it is something as infrequent as every year we're going to update the title tag to have the year, just put a calendar reminder.
Yep, that's a great point too. One other thing, let's see. Content repurposing was something you didn't touch on a bit in this webinar, but I'd be curious to talk about that a little with you. Do you have any ideas or suggestions for people in terms of turning, perhaps a blog post into an infographic, or sort of using what you have in different formats?
Yeah. Okay. So for that example of turning a blog post into an infographic, you obviously have to make it shorter. So you want to find like the the most important things, make them shorter, hire someone to make that infographic, and then you could pop that back into the blog post and share it around on social.
Right.
I know sometimes for Search Engine Journal, our designer will take blog posts and turn them into videos too. Do you want to talk about that, Danny?
Yeah, that's another good option. If you, and again, this works really well, especially if you have one popular piece of content, say a blog post that did really well, like, above average. If you can find ways to repurpose that into, other forms like a video, or just some other type of content, those tend to also do really well because they're sort of proven ideas, and that goes back to what Christy was saying right at the start. Ultimately, great ideas are what matter most. So you want the great idea, and then a great idea should do good no matter what format you put it in. So, if you recognize, and Larry Kim, we mentioned Larry Kim from Mobile Monkey, he had this concept of unicorn content. So if you have a unicorn, you want to take that unicorn and put it on every channel that you got and really just amplify, because you're going to, keep reaching more people. And it's just great to make the most of a winning idea when they come to you. So definitely do that whenever you have the opportunity. Cool. And then this was another good question from one of our attendees. We did talk a lot when you were talking about content length. You're talking more in terms of blog posts, but do you have any sort of guidelines for if it's maybe a product in terms of what's a good word count if you're trying to do content length for products?
I feel like it would be the same. If every other product description out there that's ranking has, it's obviously going to be less. So let's say they all have 300 words, well then you need 300 words. And that same principle, you probably can't write 1,000 words about a product or a description, but maybe you could write 400, or maybe your 300 can be vastly better.
Yep, very much just look at what's ranking and try to do something in that bell curve. Another content trend I've been hearing about is micro-influencers, which is people who are influential. Maybe they're not big names like a Kardashian, but they're well known in specific industries or niches. So, Christy, I was wondering if you might have any experience of working with micro-influencers and how that can help with your content marketing and promotion.
Sure. So my experience with micro-influencers is more in social media, but if you can identify them, I worked with a makeup brand before where they reached out to, again, not the Kim Kardashians of the world, but people with maybe 5,000 or 10,000 followers, but they created great content. So the makeup company would offer them a little bit of money and free makeup to do reviews on the makeup, and then they were able to, one, get mentioned on those influencers' channels, and then also embed those videos after and share them on their own social media. So it's a huge win. I would say if you're going to try to reach out to micro-influencers, definitely offer them something and be useful. Don't try to get them to do it for free. I think, how would we like that if someone did that for us? You're asking them to do something for your business, so make it worth their while.
Absolutely. And speaking of trends, one thing we didn't talk about yet was chatbots. And I know you're big into chatbots. So in terms of content marketing, should brands and businesses get serious about chatbots in terms of promoting content? And if they should, how can they get started?
Yes, they should. So, so chatbots, when you think of a Facebook Messenger chatbot, okay, so first, if anyone's watching and doesn't know what that is, let's set up what a Facebook Messenger chatbot is. So a chatbot is obviously an automated tool where a bot is messaging people on Facebook on behalf of your company. But you're writing the scripts, you're writing the chats. It's not AI, it's a person making messages. So why is this advantageous? Because the open rates on Facebook Messenger are on average 70 to 80%, and I believe the average open rate for an email is 5 to 10. So, I mean, I don't have to explain that math to anyone. You can have a much greater ROI with a messenger bot. So the process then that you need to do is create an audience on Facebook, get people to opt in to be a contact on Facebook. And there's lots of ways to do that, more than we have time for right now, but there's articles on Search Engine Journal, and I've written one about how you can do that. So once you start growing your contacts, then you can start sending out chat blasts. So chat blasts are the new email blast, like the new and improved email blast. So I like to give this analogy. If you can use MailChimp, you can use MobileMonkey. It's not, so MobileMonkey is the software that I use. And also I work for MobileMonkey, so being completely transparent, but even if I didn't work for them, I would still use their chatbot builder because it's actually really, really great. So it's not complicated. You don't have to use any code. Once you understand how to use it, just like MailChimp, you can create messages that are really engaging and send them out. So if you want to learn more, definitely Google it and invest some time in it.
Okay.
Oh,
Great.
also,
Yes.
one more thing. While we're on the subject of chatbots, Search Engine Journal has a chatbot, and I would love for anyone that's watching this to connect with us on Facebook. You'll get exclusive updates. If there's anything happening that's super important, we can send out a thing to you guys on Facebook immediately, and we'd love to connect. Is there any way we can share a link with them?
Yes, we can.
We're going to give you guys a bit.ly
Yes.
to get to our chatbot. So if you just go here, you can experience what a Facebook Messenger chatbot is like.
And we'll put that in the chat window, or wait, I don't. Maybe I can't do that. Well, we'll make sure to put that in the blog post. I don't think I can do that right now.
As soon as we get off of this, I will tweet out the link. So if you guys want to check it out immediately, head over to my Twitter. I'm Christy Kellogg everywhere. So yeah.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. And yeah, let's wrap it up there. So that's all the time we have left for the Q&A. But yeah, like Christy said, we're happy to keep the conversation going on Twitter a little while longer. So definitely reach out or tag us at hashtag SEJ Think Tank. And we hope to hear from you. So yeah, so we ask that you please just stick around for a short survey. It's no more than 5 minutes, and it really helps us improve future webinars for you guys. And I just wanted to quickly let you know about a couple of our upcoming webinars. As Christy mentioned, on February 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, you can join us for From Page Views to People, Don't Just Drive Traffic, Drive Customers, presented by Michelle Robbins, who is the founder and principal consultant at Beta Girl Consulting. And then on February 27th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, you can join us for How to Develop an Effective PPC Strategy to Create Profitable Campaigns, and that'll be presented by Joel Bondarowski, a SEMrush PPC Academy professor. So if those are topics that interest you, we hope to see you there, and you can register now for those on the webinar page at searchenginejournal.com. So we hope to see you there, and that's it for this SEJ Think Tank webinar. Thank you again so very much for joining us. We really, really appreciate it. We hope to see you at another SEJ webinar soon. So thanks.